In this lesson, we're going to be talking about reporting and logging in general on the various operating systems that you may run across. Linux is one of the Unix-like or Unix-based operating systems, and the Unix-based or Unix-like operating systems generally function in the same or more or less the same way when it comes to reporting and logging. Unix has long had a facility called syslog. There are a number of utilities, or a small handful of utilities, that behave like syslog and will substitute for syslog. So when we talk about Unix-like operating systems in syslog, we're really covering Linux and Solaris and Mac OS to a degree, as well as the various flavors of BSD, NetBSD, OpenBSD, FreeBSD. So we cover a wide variety of operating systems when we're talking about syslog. So taking a look at the configuration file here, and I'm on a Ubuntu Linux system where we're using a utility called rsyslog, which is a replacement for the regular syslog. And I'm going to just look at one of the configuration files here. As with a lot of the Debian-based systems, they tend to chunk up their configuration into multiple files to make it easier to manage. This is sort of the primary configuration file. And you can see that syslog has different facilities, and the facilities give you the ability to have some granularity in the logging and reporting that you do. And you can also see here, it tells us which facilities log to which log files. So the auth facility will log to a file called auth.log, for example, and kernel messages or kern messages will log to kern.log. So that's the syslog configuration file. Different syslog-like utilities will have slightly different configuration file formats, but they'll all really be about which facilities log to which logs and what log level are we setting things to. So you can see here some different log levels. We have crit, error, and notice, for example. There's info and warn as well. So different log levels depending on how much or how little you want to be able to see. So I'm going to jump over to the log file now, and you can see the different log files that are there. There are a number of log files, again, based on applications and whether the application is using syslog or whether they're using their own log format or whether something else is going on. So there's a lot of different log files here. You can also see all of the files in red that are .gz. That's because there's a utility called logrotate that rotates logs so you can store a week, 2 weeks, a month, multiple months, depending on how much you need to be able to store. And it compresses the older ones so they take up less space. So let's take a look at one of the log files here, and we can take a look at syslog, which is the primary log file for just system-related messages. And you can see this one is full of cron messages, and they all look more or less the same. Cron is a program that causes other programs or utilities to run at scheduled intervals. And you can see the results here of all of the cron jobs that have been run. Let me take a look at another one. We were talking about the kern log before, or the kernel log for kernel messages. You can see here all of the kernel messages. So these are all of the messages right now that have been created when the system booted up. You can see all of the informational messages that were written out when this system booted up. As I said, a number of other messages. Another one that's useful to look at is the auth log. You can see different logs here or messages where a different user did something that required some authentication. And you can see all of that here going back a little ways. So these are the different log files that you will find on a Unix-like operating system. Typically, you're going to go into /var/log or varlog, and you're going to find the log files there, which is going to help you see what may be going on a particular system, because you're going to have all of the log messages. Now, as I said, this is for Unix-like operating systems, and I'm sitting here on a Linux system right now, and there are a number of other Unix-like operating systems that will be covered by what's here. Let me show you Windows, which is a little bit different. Right-click on my computer here. I want to select Manage. And you'll notice there was a little shield next to where it said Manage, and that's because this requires administrative privileges to do the functions in this program. So now I'm in Computer Management, and inside Computer Management, we have the ability to look at the Event Viewer, and the Event Viewer is the same idea as the log files that we were looking at before. You can see here I've got some custom views. Here's administrative events, and there don't appear to be any there. So I'm going to open up the Windows logs, and we can look at the application log, and it's trying to generate that at the moment. And now we've got the application log messages showing up here in our event viewer. Now the top part here shows us the individual messages, and if you click on any of them, you get the detail down below. So in general here, we can see that the log name is application, and the source is something called security-spp. It's got a task category of none, and keywords are classic. It shows the computer here, and I can click on details, and I can get any detail that may be associated with this particular event. And we can see the event ID and any other data that was involved in this particular event. And this one's not all that interesting. I could go to a different one here, and I've got the detail from a PostgreSQL event. It says error canceling statement due to user request, and I go back over to general, and I've got all of the information there. You can see the source is PostgreSQL. Now, there's a number of different types of Windows logs. Windows categorizes their logs a little differently than Unix does. So we've got application, security, and system primarily. There's also a setup log and forwarded events. We can look at the security log, and you can see audit success on a number of objects here. There's a whole lot of audit success messages, and we'll get into talking about auditing in a different talk a little bit later. But you can see here, these are a lot of logon audit success events, and I can take a look here and I can see the computer that's involved. If I go to details, I can see the username and the domain name where this event took place. If I go to the system, I have a number of events that revolve around services primarily that are running on the system. You can see the source is Service Control Manager, and this has to do with the different services that are running on this system. So there's a lot of different places that you can look for log events, and there are a lot of useful things that you may want to be looking for log messages for, depending on what it is you're investigating. You may want to be looking at log on messages and log off messages. You may be looking for messages regarding errors, or in some cases you may see log messages around network events. So if a system is under attack and you are investigating that attack, then you're going to be wanting to look for log messages that may relate to problems with the networking on a particular system. But these are the different places you would look for reporting of events on either Windows or Unix-like operating systems.